Hi, HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today, we're joined by Katrina Hutchinson-O'Neill, Group Head of Resourcing and Talent at StepStone. Katrina, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, very good, thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Before we jump in, for those that aren't aware of yourself, give us a little bit of a background to yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Oh goodness, that's always the $1,000,000 question, right? So I'm one of those people who fell into HR by accident, I guess.
One of everyone.
Exactly right. So, well, do you know what? I don't think as much nowadays. I meet loads of kids today who say, when I grow up, I want to be in HR.
Oh, that's because it's the new generation, but the old.
Right. That was not a thing when I was at school. Whenever they sat you down in the grammar school in Northern Ireland and went, you can be a solicitor, a vet, a doctor, or a journalist, pick one. Like that was your options right there.
Yeah.
So I kind of fell into it by accident. I was working in the BPO industry with a VC startup, running operations, running client businesses with clients like Amazon and Cisco. Had loads of fun. I was like 12 years old, didn't know what I was doing, making it up. And fell into HR because the lovely John Mannell, who now works at Hayes, worked at Reed at the time and contacted me and went, look, I want someone that can understand recruitment, but I want someone that knows contact centers to come in and run Reed's HR shared service centers because they were having some challenges. Went in and did that, and goodness, that was like 16 years ago, and the rest is history. So I kind of fell in love with HR through the resourcing angle, progressed through different heads of resourcing roles, got moved to Scotland by RBS when I was working as head of resourcing there. Most recently then was working for Nationwide Building Society as director of resourcing, doing a huge transformation program for a couple of their years there. And now StepStone, where I'm heading up talent, learning, development, leadership, and resourcing. So it's been a really organic career, I guess. I'm probably a resourcing geek at heart. That's my passion. That's the bit. If you get me talking about that, Chris, that could be a really long call today. But I've developed a secondary passion, like a second wind, if you like, in my career around talent and leadership. So I'm really enjoying that at the minute as well.
Amazing. And you're also involved in quite a few communities outside of the day-to-day, right?
Yeah. So my unpaid side hustles, I guess, it feels like that uses up a lot of my vacation time. But I think the resourcing, in-house resourcing industry in particular, has really suffered from underinvestment over the last probably a couple of decades. Loads of reasons why I think that is. I think probably not least the CIPD don't give it as much focus and attention as a specialism as they do to some of the other areas of HR. Like I think they do like
I definitely agree with you on that.
A 5-day module and you're a resourcing expert, whenever this is one of the most technically demanding disciplines in HR today. It's super commercial, super IT technical. So I got involved a couple of years ago with the Resourcing Leaders 100, which was just kind of in its infancy then. And it's a network of the most senior resourcing leaders across the UK and Ireland, a peer network that's really designed to bring that community together, but to help us to educate the rest of our industry and raise the bar of resourcing leadership. How do recruitment leaders of the future get a seat at the table? Well, they get it by being more commercial and by being better at their job than the average person today is. So I've been really lucky to be voted as the chairperson of that network for the last year. I'm in my last couple of weeks of that term now. And next year I'm going to be on the leadership council for it as well, heading up the strategy and external relations piece. So it's been a huge journey with that, and actually something I'm really proud of.
Well, it's cool to always hear that because it just shows whenever I speak to people that have those, as you call them, side hustles outside, it just shows that your work is your passion.
It adds value as well, Chris. Honestly, I've said this a few times. I don't know a single solitary other profession where the 100 most senior leaders of that profession in one country or across a couple of countries know each other like personally. Like we all know each other.
Valuable.
We have a WhatsApp group. If somebody says, I've got, obviously it's all very much covered by, there's nothing confidential on there, but if someone says, I've got a really tough problem with how do you assess for these skills, or what's the best technology for X, Y, and Z, or has anyone, put out, an RFP for this type of business before? What's out there in the market? Can you give me some advice? We have a WhatsApp group where everyone talks to each other. So at any point, if I'm like, I need to use my Who Wants to Be a Millionaire phone a friend card, I just ping out the question on WhatsApp, and all of a sudden
It's
you've
so
got
amazing, right?
15 senior leaders coming
Yeah.
back
You
for
can't
no
pay for
reason.
that. You can't even
Yeah,
pay.
exactly.
Can't even buy that, and you can't buy all of that. And this is exactly why we have the same thing for our workshops and our own app for the CHROs. That type of that being able to pick up the phone and drop a message to that community where you've got all of that knowledge and experience existing and get an immediate answer, right, from a practitioner, who's just been there, done it, not from a vendor or a consultant, someone who's been there, put out those fires and have that. And also then you've got, I'm sure everyone else starts chiming in with all of their insights, and not everyone agrees, which is even better, because then you get like this really diverse perspective of how it can work. It's incredible. So of course the benefits are because a lot of people say it to me like, oh, I don't have time to spend outside to do stuff like that. I'm like, that's probably why you don't have time.
No, you're right.
If you spent some time actually networking and speaking to people, you'd be 10 steps ahead of where you are right now, instead of struggling and running into brick walls.
100%. Like if you send out a message and go, like, I need a white labeled RFP document for a new piece of HR tech, someone sends you a completely white labeled, no confidential information in a document. Right there, you've just saved yourself or your procurement department 20 hours of work trying to pull that together from scratch. And that's just one simple example.
Yeah. It's so underrated. Honestly, since I've opened up my network and started, and that's how we and you met.
Absolutely, it is, yeah.
Right, just through mutual connections, right? And this is where we are right now. And we'll be meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Crazy Americans.
Yeah, exactly. So I encourage everyone listening to make sure you step outside. It's so important. And just saying you haven't got enough time that's actually even more of a concern. If you don't have time to go outside and actually reflect on the business and meet peers, then something's going wrong. And trust me, by doing that, you'll save a lot of time, and it will actually help you shortcut your execution plans if you do that. So make sure you do it.
And you know what? It's also the best way when you need to hire somebody. A bit of a standing joke. I was getting a bit of stick from the RL100 because at one point, 6% of the RL100 worked for me.
It is the best thing too, as well, right? Exactly.
We put this together as your personal recruitment pool. I'm like, yes, we have. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't want to mention names, but it happens all the times in our network. I'll get a call after one of our CHR roundtables and like, Chris, I just got a message from so-and-so saying, can I head up HR for this region or that region? And I'm like, not surprised. It's a compliment to you. I just tell them it's a compliment. Don't worry. It means that you added value to that roundtable discussion or that event or that network. So it's a great opportunity both for your own personal career development, because a lot of people, that's where your future roles come from, and also for companies that are looking for great talent as well. So yeah, there's so many benefits. So for everyone listening, how if and are interested in getting involved in that group, how can they learn more about doing that? Just before I forget.
So super easy way is just message me on LinkedIn, and I will happily have a chat with you about it, or connect you into one of my fellow leadership council members. But if you Google RL100, I'm sure you can probably share the link on this anyway.
Yeah, I will.
But we have a site there, and you can go and you can actually, this was a brave move, Chris. We actually put everybody who's in the RL100, we put their picture and where they work on that site.
Good, nice transparency in this day and age.
A bit of a brave move. And so you can go in and you can see who's on there. What we have found now, which we might rethink it, we do find that a lot of people, when they're headhunting, they start with that list. So that's
can't blame them though.
Well, I know. So
it's like, thanks for doing all the hard work for me, Katrina. You're just putting them all in one place, and we can just call them. So who's this for? So everyone listening, obviously, what's the criteria?
It's for senior leaders, and so our qualifications based on two things. Number one, you've got to be working in-house in a senior resourcing or talent leadership. So where recruitment is a big part of what you do, and you genuinely have a deep interest in that. So you want to find out what's on the horizon, what's the future of resourcing, what's happening with tech, what's happening with thinking, what's happening with regulations. So those people who are the most senior leaders representing that in their companies. Second part of it though is it's not a network where you just take, you've got to be there to give as well. And as I said a few minutes ago, we set this up with relatively altruistic purposes, which was to educate and to raise the bar of the wider resourcing industry. So we ask all of our members to give a little bit of their time, even if it's only a couple of hours a year, to run mentoring sessions using Meet and Engage platform. So we get out there, we advertise that we have anywhere from 5 to 15 or 20 resourcing managers, resourcing consultants, like more junior people coming on and just sharing your wisdom and knowledge. So that's the two things that we ask of people, to be willing to contribute at the right level, but be willing to give of their time as well.
Is this just for UK, just to be clear? Because obviously we have a lot of international. Are you open to people outside the UK?
So it's funny, we started out as UK and Ireland, but there are now so many people in the R100, including myself, who have truly global roles. I've got 28 countries. We have Mondelez in there, Jennifer Candy, who's got I think even more than that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So we've got a number of people in there who I think a lot of companies are putting their global director of resourcing or talent roles in the UK, because it's we're kind of at the cutting edge of what's happening in that part of HR. So if you're not based in the UK, but you're leading this and you have responsibility that spans across the UK or Europe, by all means still come and have a chat to us. We are setting up a separate one for APAC, which is I was over in...
It's such an emerging...
It's huge, right? It's huge.
You've got to do it. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I was over there in August, spent some time with them back end of August, beginning of September, meeting resourcing leaders in Australia. And that's all kicking off now. So I think I'm going to go back in 2019 to the first proper session that they have there.
For everyone listening, the reason I'm spending so much time on this is everyone always complains to me that there's not that many networks out there of senior leaders that they can go. Well, obviously they know we do this as our, but I think what you're discussing is more specialists to those resource leaders. So anyone listening that does fit that criteria, make sure you reach out to Katrina. To move on, Katrina, where you are now, what's really sort of occupying your mind on a day-to-day basis?
Probably not much different to what's occupying everybody else's minds, I guess. If you look at what we're doing today, operating across 48 brands in 28 countries, clearly there are different challenges with different types of skill sets in different regions. And like everyone else, we're pressing on some areas where it's really hard to find talent. A great example for me is Warsaw. Trying to find tech talent in Warsaw, where
that is such a hilarious example. Tech guys in Warsaw, but everyone listening, that's like explain to everyone who's outside of the UK. How can we describe that to them?
Poland is so Warsaw, the place where our office is, it's called locally, they call it Mordor. I don't know if you watch Lord of the Rings.
Was it middle of nowhere?
It's in the middle of nowhere, and it's only offices. So in the morning, all of the workers come up from the subway like the orcs in Lord of the Rings is kind of the joke of it, and it's all techies. But the unemployment rate in Warsaw for techies is like 0.05%, right? So the only reason you're not working if you're a front end, back end, or full stack developer in Warsaw is because you've chosen not to.
Yeah.
So that's the market that we're hiring into there, and so in that kind
crazy.
of so in that kind of a market, we're looking at. We've got candidates who, if they've got to fill in an application form, that's too much effort. Why would they? They've got other companies that don't even...
They're chasing them down. Yeah.
Exactly. So there we're having to look at some really innovative things to do at the front end. So without giving away too many secrets, one thing that we're potentially looking at there is partnering with a San Francisco startup, which is run by an amazing woman who qualified from Harvard with a degree in occupational psychology and interned at the White House. She's super underqualified, right?
Wow. Okay. She's one of those people you just don't want to stand next to. Like, what do you do for a living? Yeah.
So she's developed this amazing assessment, which we're just evaluating at the minute. But what I love about that is it's all based on World of Warcraft. So it's a role-playing action adventure game. Yeah, but it doesn't feel like an assessment. And if you look at a normal assessment, even the really good ones that are out there, and I work with a couple of awesome ones, but even those, it's still stop-start, right? So you go in and you log in, and then it gives you some instructions, and then you do a test, and then you come out, and then you get some more instructions, then you do another test. So it feels like a computerized version of sitting at your desk with a pen and paper doing your SHL test that you used to do when I started
Yeah.
a long time ago. This one, from the second that you log in, you're building your avatar.
Oh,
I had
wow.
to learn what that was from my kids, by the way. But you're building your avatar. Even as you're building your avatar, every single minute thing that you do is being assessed. So they have built a
Interesting.
data stream of millions and millions of data points over a 12-minute test that they believe gives you an unbelievably reliable picture of someone's not only behavioral traits, but also their competence at certain tasks and their cognitive ability.
And they don't even know they're doing it. They're just
And they don't
almost
even
like
know
they're just having fun and creating their avatar
yeah, but
whilst
this
they're
is where
doing
you have to be in resourcing. It's why I love resourcing. You've got to be a bit creative. So, that particular assessment, do I believe that we could use it genuinely to select people in or out? Probably. I've got to test that. Like, that's really important. You can't play with these things. You need to make sure that it works if you're going to be making a decision to progress
Sure.
someone or not. What it does do, however, is give us an opportunity to launch something that's never been launched in Eastern Europe before, that we can get a huge amount of press coverage from as well. And that's really interesting because we're bringing something that's very techie focused into the techie market.
Makes
Um,
sense. Yeah.
and yeah,
Okay,
and from
you're
that,
looking at your audience and saying what
exactly.
specifically you're going to get these guys involved.
Exactly. And if we could get, 1,000 or 2,000 people to play that game and be willing to share their contact details with us as a result, that's a talent pool that would be really hard for us to track down. So even if it doesn't work as an assessment, it could potentially really work for us as an employer branding tool. Hopefully it does both. I think that's kind of what's cool about resourcing, that you've got to think a little bit differently than you might think in some other areas of HR around the tools that you're using.
Yeah. And you're having to evolve as technology, especially you have to evolve quickly because the technology around you is just, lightning. It's just going so fast. So as a
Absolutely.
resourcing leader, just out of curiosity, how do you stay up to date with like the latest technology and progress? Because there's so much going on. There's a new tool popping out every day.
So I think the networks that I've mentioned to you really help
Yeah.
with that.
Again, another example of why it's so important.
So I probably spend like a day every 8 weeks going to whether it's online or whether it's in person, going to at least one event where I'm hearing about what's happening with resourcing technology. And I know that I don't know if, for all of your listeners, if they might appreciate when I say resourcing tech, what a diverse world that is. In HR, I know we talk about things like our HRIS, the core HR system. We talk about our LMS for learning. We might talk about ancillary products for performance management. When we talk about tech and resourcing, it's huge. It's a big amorphous lump of everything from our ATS, traditional applicant tracking system that you might use to run your advertising of the roles, through to bespoke different attraction technologies, social sourcing tools. The latest development in that is CRM technology. What we're really good at in resourcing is stealing stuff from other areas of business and then cannibalizing it to work for resourcing. And the latest area in that is CRM. So you'll be familiar with Salesforce
Hmm.
that marketing departments use. We're now harnessing that type of technology in recruitment as an example. So to bring that to life for you, what we would do with that is we recognize that not everybody's going to be interested in making a move to a new job tomorrow. So the traditional way of doing direct sourcing is I've got a role, it's very transactional. I'm going to go out there and find some people, warm them up, and then they'll apply for the job. And it's not really that linear in real life. We know that we need to build brand awareness so that whenever somebody is ready to make that move, and that might be tomorrow, but it might be in 6 months, a year, and 2 years from now, when they are ready themselves to make that move, they will think of our company first. And we do that through CRM. So we engage with them, not talking to them about jobs and recruitment, but giving people, based on their skill sets, information that's really interesting to them. So if we're talking to tech people, we might have some articles that we've co-written with our CTO that might be talking about something like, how do you blend agile methodology and waterfall methodology successfully in one program? I know that sounds super thrilling, right? But believe it
For
or not,
those
right?
people, it's like, whoa.
That is a real topic. so we're able to blend stuff like that. We produce content, really rich content, that we then put into a CRM system, and it allows us to have non-linear conversations with those candidates. What that means is, if we're talking to you and you're in that talent pool, we're measuring in the background what sort of content you're engaging with, and what you do will dictate what we give you next.
Of
So if we
course.
know that you're not opening our videos,
Hmm.
then we'll start to send you some emails. If we see that you're really interested in content around, for example, agile project methodology, but you're not reading content that's about solution architecture, we're going to stop sending you solution architecture content and
Yeah.
start sending you the. So you start to engage people in a way that's really different to what they've had before. And a great example I can give you of this, we were looking for solution architects. And that's an area that's close to my heart. I spent a year and a half being a solution architect at RBS. And I know that it's really hard to find people with that skill set. So we decided to use this approach to hire about 20 to 30 solution architects. Did exactly what I've described, created a few messages along with some people from the technology function and some people from the architecture function. And we sent out our first message to, it's about 300 people who had the right skill set in the right area. And honestly, Chris, we didn't expect to get much back from that. I thought we would maybe get, one or two people coming back going, how did you get my contact details? Please take me off your database. And then we might get 3 or 4 people saying, oh, that's interesting. Tell me a bit more about your company. We actually got 27 gold star applications straight off like that.
Wow.
And it was because nobody was approaching these people
In the
in that
same
way.
way. Yeah, and the whole time. Well, first of all, that's amazing to hear that you guys are taking that approach. And I've been banging on about this for so long, and everyone's probably tired of hearing it because we're already doing that with our customers.
Of course, it's
So
no different,
why are
right?
we not doing it with our
Yeah.
from a talent? Like from it just drives me insane.
So we talk about this stuff and it sounds like it's black magic, but I'm literally saying we'll happily take the credit for it in the resourcing world as being the enfant terribles of HR, right?
Yeah.
But most of this stuff, there's not that much new under the sun. We are gladly stealing and cannibalizing
No, of
from
course,
other
you're
areas
using the
of business.
tools that you already have and the resources that are already there,
Absolutely.
but you're using it in a different way than the people would typically use in your role or in most companies, to be
100%.
honest. Oh,
You're
sorry.
starting to hire people with different skill sets. So
Hmm.
now if I look at my team, I'm hiring people who might previously have worked in external media relations or in marketing, producing content, and they've no HR background, and they don't need to have any HR background, but I need people who are good at external media relations. I need people who are good at content creation. I need people who are techies and who can set up and run CRM workflows. With no HR background, because the fact that they're doing it in HR is coincidental to the skills that they've got. That's really interesting, but it's also a hard sell in a HR department at times as well.
Yeah, I know, but I think we're starting to see slowly move towards that. They have to as well, and it's like I started like trying to convince HR leaders that they need to start a podcast for the
Yeah, no,
same
I agree.
for the same purpose the same thing you did with your email. You could be doing the same thing with a podcast. Imagine interviewing your CTO and the other individual you mentioned, the solutions architect, and creating a podcast around that, which then you send out to these potential people that you want to hire and then get or engage with. They're going to be so much more engaged in that piece of
Yeah,
content than they would in a typical, I don't know, mail shot or something, or any other. You want to make sure you be where they are. Like if people are used to consuming content, video, micro content, like a TED Talk, for example, then why not use those tools? And you already have the systems, the delivery mechanisms already in the business, right?
100%. And do you know what? I will tell you, as a recruiter, I don't ever find myself or any of my team struggling to recruit for leaders who are out there and who are active on social in the right
Mm-hmm.
way. Those people who are out there who are creating, even honestly, Chris, if it's just posts on LinkedIn, even if they're just out there writing about what's going on in their world or some of the current hot topics, those people, whenever they have a vacancy, are typically coming to us with and here's my short list of people, and some of them even to the point of, and I've already started contacting them, so can you have a look and make sure there's nobody out there that we've missed?
Yeah.
Those leaders that we struggle to recruit for, where they've got more difficult to fill roles, are those leaders who just don't want to engage with that. And sadly, you still see it today, even when the recruitment team is doing all the work for them and saying, look, I've created some social content around this specific role, even if it's a call to action for this role. Can you and your leadership team share that out in social media? You'd probably be surprised by the number of senior
Really?
leaders who don't even do that, but still come back and complain, well, I've not got my candidates. Well, what's the answer to that?
I think if you're a senior leader in a business now, you have no choice but to be a part, to have a personal brand and to work on a personal brand and leverage it.
And that's what people today in this kind of, and again, this is us stealing with pride data that sits within your customer department, customer
Exactly.
marketing,
Yeah.
right? What do people increasingly want more and more of today? Hyper-personalized journeys. So they want to feel like
Exactly.
they've got a personalized relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to pretend, I'm not going to be one of these recruitment people who stands in a soapbox and says every single candidate expects that they're going to have a hyper-personalized journey. I don't believe that for a second. But I do believe it is true for certain levels and certain types of roles. If people are working in a shortage skill set area, they know that. And they expect you to work for it, whether you
Yeah.
like it or not. They expect
Especially
you to
talk
work
about digital talent, you ain't got a choice now.
100%. You're competing with everyone, right?
Everyone. Yeah.
And it'll be, I know we're not supposed to say the Brexit word, but we
It's going to get
are.
harder. It's just going to get
Oh,
harder. Yeah. It's a lot harder
exactly. And
than it
even
used
at
to
the
be.
bottom end of the market, I know a previous company I worked for, and the initial hypothesis was Brexit wasn't going to impact us because we weren't really recruiting large numbers of non-UK workers, and we were recruiting a lot of entry-level roles. But what's happened is for that organization, it's become much more difficult now. And the reason it has is they're now competing with fast food chains and with retail outlets because they're having to start to increase
Everyone's going to have the
their
same problem.
packages. Yeah, they've done a lot of work on their employee value proposition. And those organizations that feel like they didn't have to, I think they're in for a little bit of a rude awakening if they're not already starting to see that coming through in their resourcing funnel metrics.
What advice would you give to other leaders then that are going through this challenge? Where do they start on this journey? Like for you, like when was that light bulb moment for you then that this is the way we need to approach this?
I think it was evolution, not revolution, in terms of the
Yeah.
thinking. Not that I woke up one day and went, here's a light bulb, we're going to start doing it this way. I think we recognize that if you're looking at the right metrics and you're looking at your resourcing funnels and performance in the right way, you start to build up a picture really quickly around where you're having issues. I think where organizations fall down a lot, and this definitely is a soapbox area for me, is getting their KPIs wrong, getting their metrics wrong. If you're looking at your metrics for resourcing as an average of averages, you're never going to spot that you've got problems. And by the time that you realize that you've got an issue, you've probably already got about 6 executive committee members screaming at you because they're not getting the people that they need. And your metrics have been hiding the fact that you've got a burning red issue in one area. You're also not going to then be on the front foot around any of your transformational thinking around what you could start to do differently. So my biggest advice for anyone listening to this, particularly if you're in a generalist HR leadership position, is to really take some good advice around what those metrics should be to understand the health of your funnel, and to not do that just on an enterprise or a company level, but to break it into whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 or 15, depending on the size and complexity of your company, but break it into your critical job family buckets to look at that data. The top one that I would recommend that all companies look at is empty chair time. And I don't know if that's one that everyone will be familiar with.
So wait, what is that for me? Because I don't know what that is.
The traditional resourcing metric that I see if I go in to do a bit of work with a company to help them understand their recruitment, the first thing that they always show me is their time to hire. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, yeah, we've got all these problems with recruitment and people aren't happy. And we don't understand why, because our time to hire is, like 6 weeks, which is
How long it takes to fill that chair, basically.
Yeah, and time to hire is such a false metric, and it gets reported not for any malicious purposes, because people don't really understand why they're reporting it, or they're reporting it in a way that they think is fair to them. More often than not, it gets reported as a introspective to resourcing metric. So my time to hire is from the moment that you gave me a perfectly polished, fully ready to roll
I'm with you.
requisition,
And
the
I
day that
can
I
see how it can
posted
go.
it,
Yeah.
exactly, to the day that I got, Jane to accept that offer and say that she was going to take the job, that's my time to hire. And it doesn't take into consideration what was the process that the business had to go through that might not even be within HR's control. It may be something that's set by the CEO or someone else. But what was the process that the line manager had to go through to get to the point of that perfectly polished, ready to advertise vacancy? And then what happened after the point that Jane accepted the offer? How long did it take you to get them through security vetting or to get them through your onboarding process to get their IT equipment set up?
Or for them to go through how long it takes them
Their
to leave the
notice period.
company, notice
Yeah,
period. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. So I think it's a metric that I would look at if I'm measuring the effectiveness of my recruiters. It's never a metric that I would ever want to share with the business because it's a meaningless metric to the business. That would be like me telling you that if I'm a mechanic and I'm going to, put your car in for the MOT and you drop the car in with me on a Monday and you phone me on Wednesday and I say, well, the car's still not ready. It'll not be ready till Friday. And you've got no car for the week, but when you collect it on Friday and you say, I want a discount because I've had no car for 5 days, I'm like, well, Chris, it only took me 2 hours to do the job on your car. It's just that it took me a really long time to get it up on the blocks in the first place because I'd taken too many other cars in that week. The
Yeah.
real impact to you is that you didn't have your car for 5 days. You don't care that it took me 2 hours to do the job. You care about the 5 days you didn't have your car.
Of course.
And,
Well, look,
and so
go on.
empty
Sorry.
chair time is that. Yeah, no, it's fine. Empty chair time is the measurement of what's the real impact to the business. The real impact is if you're sitting in that chair today and you leave tomorrow, how long does it take us to have somebody else with the right skills and qualifications sitting in that chair?
Yeah.
And that should allow you to look at things like the health of your strategic workforce planning or your demand planning. So why is it that you're not realizing that you're going to have to build a pipeline for certain roles? It makes you look at how good your approval process is and is that fit for purpose. It brings into it the health of your ability to find candidates, but it also brings into it your ability to select candidates in a reasonable way. Have you put a 7-step recruitment process in there that takes 3 months to get somebody through? That happens, right? And then it also takes into the onboarding time, but it's the real impact to the business. I did a piece of work with another company a little while ago. And when I looked at this for them, they wanted me to bring it to life for them. So we worked with finance to get a nominal figure for, okay, in your sales roles, if you don't have somebody that you've budgeted to be in that chair generating revenue, what is the loss in terms of the revenue that you've got in your budget line that you're going to have to try and cover somewhere else or just lose? And when we worked it out for that company, we realized that was adding up to nearly £6 million a year in lost revenue because of empty chair time. But when you looked at the hiring metrics, they were awesome, right? They were hiring people in 4 weeks. It was amazing.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, they only had 1 week notice periods for their sales staff. They weren't starting the recruitment process for a couple of weeks.
There's always yeah. Or I can think of 3 companies that I worked in where it's exactly the same, where we had a short notice period and then the time to get in was like 2 months. So
yeah, exactly.
and then we wonder why, and then obviously wonder why we're not hitting our sales targets. I think sales is a perfect example where that happens a lot and it has the biggest impact in companies.
Yeah.
Well, look, that leads us to a nice sort of quick fire round. So I don't want to miss this out before we wrap up. And where I'm going to ask you 5 questions and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. So are you ready?
Go for it.
Go for it. What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR or resourcing leader?
Combination of HR structures where resourcing people were not seen as specialists, and where you had to do everything via HR business partners, and also my own skill set in learning how to get past that and navigate that.
Fantastic. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Be a business person first and a HR person second. If you can't talk to the business in a commercial way and you're not a business person first, you're never going to be taken seriously around the table.
Fantastic. What's one book that you'd recommend to our audience and why?
So it's a bit of a weird one, right? It's called Bye Bye Banks.
That sounds fun.
Bye Bye Banks. And it's a really thin little book. It's about the same size as Who Moved My Cheese. And it's nothing to do with HR, but it's all to do with the future thinking of the state of the banking industry. Even if you don't work in the banking industry, what I love about it is the way that it makes your brain change and how it interprets what's happening around future of work and future of industry.
And could you share one internet resource that you use to increase your productivity, stay up to date with current events? What's your go-to resources?
Honestly, it's a really dull answer, but it's still LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's not a dull answer. It's like 90% of the answers.
Yeah, and the reason it's LinkedIn is because there's so much rich freeview content. I have signed up for things like CEB Gartner and stuff in the past as well, and that's a really useful resource for certain things. But for value for money, i.e. it's free, I go to LinkedIn at the minute still every time, or the RL100 WhatsApp group.
Yeah, oh no, I was about to say, don't forget about the WhatsApp group, because that is a resource, and a lot of people with their Slacks and their WhatsApp groups is probably where some of the most value comes from. And then lastly, what's the one thing about your business that most excites you today?
I think it feels like working with 48 different startups at one time. So it's completely, it's 48 different brands, kind of really probably feels like about 8 different businesses. And you're working on one hand with an immediately post M&A startup type company. And on the other hand, you're working with a business with like 20, 25 years of history. That almost sort of schizophrenic approach. I actually kind of enjoy that.
Yeah, and you don't get that. You can't probably get that in many organizations as well.
Having done nearly 10 years in the banking industry.
Yes, the opposite.
Don't get me wrong. Oh, well, you'd be surprised.
Well, now with fintech, they haven't got a choice. So
people think that the banking industry is super conservative and things.
I mean, I think more of the regulation point of view. That's what.
Yeah, you've got to be smart and you've got to be on your A game, because there's more complexity around regulations. But trust me, like, I think if a lot of small businesses knew the speed at which you're able to make and move on some of those really complicated decisions in the banking industry, they'd be really surprised. I think it gets a bad reputation unfairly with startups.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I always perceive it that way, and I think many people do, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm going to lecture you over on
a separate podcast or after the podcast.
This abuse you of the idea of
Fantastic. Before we wrap up, if there's one parting piece of guidance for everyone, what would that be? And also, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you if they have any questions or want to reach out to you?
Sure. So LinkedIn's always the best way. So just message me on LinkedIn. I'm usually on top of that. Best bit of advice I think I could give anybody, I'm probably going to look at my counterparts in resourcing and talent on this, right? Is that you do need to get a better voice around the table if you've not got one already today. Because I think if I look at the future of work and the future of HR, it's going to be more and more specialized. If I look to the next 10 to 15 years, I think that we have to be greater than the sum of our parts today. And a generalist business partner model, I don't think, is what's going to get us there by itself. So play a more active role. Don't be the enfant terribles of the HR world in your department. Even if recruitment people think that they want to be rock stars, maybe don't act like it in the office, and just play more at the right level within your organization. I think that's the way forward.
Fantastic. Well, look, Katrina, really appreciate you taking the time out to join us on the show. I'm glad we managed to get you on the show today. And we appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and experience with everyone. I'm sure you're going to be getting a lot of LinkedIn messages, so don't blame me.
Oh, no, it's fine. No
Yeah. For everyone listening, as always, guys, if you head over to hrleaders.com, everything that was discussed on the show, anything that was mentioned will be in the show notes as well. And I'll also link to Katrina's LinkedIn page and everything she's mentioned there. Apart from that, Katrina, thank you so much for taking your time out to join us. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, I suppose.
Yeah, perfect. I will see you tomorrow.
All right. See you later, Katrina.
Thanks. Bye.